That's what I was supposed to do. Oh, dang, that's right. No, actually, everyone should know that Dave lied a minute ago. His hair was my color before he started listening to Swamp Dweller. This is what will happen to your hair if you actually start listening to it every night. So, tread carefully.
It's true. It's true. I blame Swamp Dweller for my whitish gray hair. It's
It was
his
an
fault.
amazing transformation. It was really creepy.
I think Swamp Dweller, to be honest, because he's pretty young. I think he's like 25, 27, somewhere around
He'd
there.
like you to think so.
I honestly believe that he colors his hair because he's got long hair too. And I think he colors it because his hair would be white from all of those scary stories that he is, putting out there.
My guess is he consumed some other life forms to keep himself going. But, teach their own.
So are you saying he's like a vampire?
Look, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dave. You know him better than I do. So if you want to say vampire, you go ahead.
I'll say it. He's a vampire.
There you go.
He's a complete vampire. Fedora wearing Jon Hudson. We love it when you come on in here and hang on out with us. And you'll be on this weekend with Gemma Jade and filling in for Big Willie, who had a family emergency this weekend. Enzo, our good friend Enzo, will be filling in for our good friend.
Good. Yeah,
right.
no, actually really enjoyed having Enzo on the other day. That'll be fun.
All right. Let's get into the news. Starting off with the brief, the big story coming out of there about Gary Reed and author, journalist Tim McMillan. What do you got for us?
Well, first off, for a second, remove all the UFO stuff from your head and just consider the fact that Tim McMillan and a bunch of other people worked really, really hard to end the reign of a incredibly aggressive person who is accused of improprieties within the office. And while that does impact us, it needs to be understood that at a very, very formal level, this has absolutely nothing to do with UFOs. Now, it does tie into it in a really creepy way, and I'll get to that. But at its core, what you have is you have Tim McMillan reporting on a story that he'd been working on for 2 years, that essentially Gary Reed, who was the, oh boy, I apologize. I don't have his full title with me, but this guy was one of the more significant individuals that you would find. And essentially he was having an improper relationship with one of his counterparts that included all sorts of contact in the workplace. There's also talk that there was another individual that he made approaches to that did not welcome his efforts. And essentially, this was the result of the IG's investigation. The IG was actually investigating him for this, and they just released their findings. So not only did we get Tim's fantastic report, and Tim finally got somewhat of an end to a 2-year adventure, and just, man, from every one of us that has any inkling of how much work that is, Tim, thank you so much. The effort's just insane what he's had to put in for this. But this is really important because this is a person who, regardless of exactly who you think was impacted, people like this in senior positions in large organizations can do a phenomenal amount of damage.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. And you know what? This is just the tip of the iceberg in this story. It very much is.
Yes, no, and that's the thing is that we're uncovering more and more about it. I did want to call out some really good coverage of it. Jay King did a fantastic show on it, and Thomas Fessler did as well. And assuming that you like the way they deliver content, I highly recommend that you check them out. And they give a good analysis of it. Needless to say, please read Tim's article. It's the least we can do for him considering the effort that went into it. But the thing that's been so fascinating for me that I want to get into is that there have already been Okay, so I don't know how many of you experience this, but essentially, in my experience, whenever you're researching a topic, you end up with all these little out of place variables that you have to track because you know they're important, but they don't tie into anything yet. And then later on, something will show up, something, and it's like dominoes. It's like click, and then tick, click, 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 and that's essentially what is starting to happen here, right? To give you an example, we've all been hearing for a while that Elizondo felt that he couldn't do his job from internally, that he couldn't even do what he had sworn an oath to do because he was being blocked. Well, it's like, well, then you ask, well, but wait, like blocked, like how is blocked? Well, turns out there is a very, very, very sneaky way you can do blocking. And that is that instead of invalidating someone's clearance, a notice can be put on someone's clearance that says that while the clearance is still active, if you want to invite him to a meeting, you must check with me first. This is what Gary Reed allegedly did to Luis Elizondo. And so what this meant was, yes, Elizondo still had his clearances intact. And yes, he was still getting invited to meetings. But every time he got invited to a meeting, the invite would get routed to Gary, and Gary wouldn't deliver it. Allegedly. And so this is a perfect example of how you can use a very rudimentary system within a bureaucracy to essentially enforce very, very unethical behavior, right? Because he did go after his clearance, but in this method, you don't have to go after his clearance specifically, right? I think you do have to log an investigation of some sort to get the tag on there. But essentially, this was a very sneaky way of doing it, right? You add to this that because of the fact that Gary Reed's behavioral issues were toward women, and considering his role within that organization and the influence that he had over hiring, you can only imagine the number of incredibly highly skilled women that became so disillusioned working in that environment that they became depressed and left. How many top people we lost because of that environment. And the thing is, people ask, well, how can one person have this big of an impact? Well, the thing is that forget his role. His role, I'll grab it in a second. His title was just madness. Not only was his role like that, but the thing you have to remember is that when you're working in a large organization and you get these broken people that find a way to work their way up management chains, right? What I have at least personally found in large organizations is that very often when you get someone in a very senior role that's really broken, they've attracted other broken people. And so it's not their whole system, but they end up with this like splattering of people in their chain of command that all kind of think the way they do. And it can create a very, very sick organization that dysfunctions in so many ways that you wouldn't even expect to have happen, right? You take, for example, our own friend Bob McGuire, right? So on your show the other day, Bob McGuire told the audience that essentially when a while ago, after Bob had initially was leaving, he'd already started talking a bit about the UFO stuff. There were some incredibly amazing projects that Bob wanted to do and should have been doing and was the right person to do it and would have been an incredible culmination of his career. And it would have been good for all of us that he was the one doing it, sort of thing. It was best for everyone. And he got shut down. And he never found out why. And because of the role Gary was in, it's Gary who would have been able to nix Bob's interest, his application, or however you want to call it. Now, once again, this is alleged. We have no proof, but you can see what I mean, where you have all this behavior that doesn't make sense. It's just like, yeah, well, that happened. Well, you don't know why it happened. So all you do is record that it happened. You record the details of what happened, and you put it on a shelf and you wait. and you end up with a bunch of these, and then you get data drops like this, and suddenly it's like this domino effect. And so I think we've only just begun to see the impact that this is going to have. And we're already starting to see an evolution of the way we are all handling the story, in that, when the story kind of started breaking on Wednesday, it was all about, just covering it and getting some of these facts. And then today I heard people starting digging into the fact that it turns out that the finding against Gary Reed was actually issued in 2020, but he did not actually leave the DoD until 2022. So there was a 2-year offboarding process. That's, believe it or not, that's not as abnormal as you think it is. For someone in that role, I would not be at all surprised if it was 6 months to a year, but 2 years, something might have been going on there. So it's another thing to investigate. And so we keep getting, and we keep digging, we keep getting, and we keep digging. And it's one hell of a process. You're muted. Can't hear you. Yeah.
How does this affect what we do on a daily basis with the UFO community? Why is this important for the UFO community to know this?
Well, I would say that you could almost use this as a personal litmus test, because essentially if you find this out and you don't have an emotional reaction to it, then you're probably not as deep into this as you thought you were, and maybe quite possibly you're better off. I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm just saying this might be a dividing line for people, because essentially, if for anyone who has been involved in the frustration aspect of it, everyone's been talking forever about, like, what is causing this internal pressure. Like, what is, like, is it this Collins Elite organization? Is it just, look, I don't even like the big formal conspiracy idea. I've seen in large companies, in good companies, just cabals of like-minded people, 4, 5, 10 of them from completely different departments, get together at lunch and start working on a project together across departments that no one else knew about, and we're completely colluding, and it turned out to be a great product, right? So this isn't always bad, right? But the thing is that in this case, it stinks to high heavens. And the thing is that what then you can do is you can then look at once again, you can look at all those frustrations. Let's, for example, take the fact that, guess who reported to Gary Reed? Susan Go. So now we have a possible explanation, alleged, to Susan Go's behavior, because if you thought about it, that was weird, right? I mean, like, obviously there was documentation showing what Lou had done. There were senior people saying what Lou had done, and she gets up there and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, the sky's pink." Like, oh, who asked you to do that, right? I mean, the last time I saw someone do that was that poor guy on TV during Operation Desert Storm in Iraq, where he was saying, "Oh, everything's fine, the Americans are fleeing," like as tanks were rolling by his office, right? I mean, it was ridiculous. So why would an intelligent, educated woman like Susan Go get on a podium and do that? Well, turns out that because of not only Elizondo's involvement in this whole paranormal topic, but also because of Elizondo's involvement in this IG investigation, right? Elizondo became a target for multiple reasons, right? And so, I mean, this just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And the reason why it matters to all of us is because it might start offering an explanation for why we saw all this weird behavior. Because he was senior enough, he had influence over enough things that it's really possible that one individual was responsible for 80% of the pushback that we've been seeing, at least for the last, say, I don't know, 5 years or something.
Well, John, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out because there is still battles going on within the UFO community, wondering whether or not this has any effect to the UFO field. You know, I mean,
Oh yes, of
it hasn't
course.
changed a lot of people's mind to what they think or not think of Lou Elizondo. And, hopefully it wakes some people up. John, I'm going to get you to wait
Okay.
right there
Yep.
because
Yep.
we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. We're going to continue on with the Unbiased UFO report. The fedora wearing Jon Hudson breaks it down for us each and every time he comes on in. And then, of course, after the Unbiased UFO report, Shirky Poo has got the news for us. It's an exciting final half hour of Spaced Out Radio. We will be back right after this. Stay tuned. All right, we're clear.
I must admit, I don't like talking about legal issues when it comes to things that I personally have emotional attachment toward, because I'm always so afraid that I'm just going to say, and not that like we have a lot of exposure here, but just, as far as like playing fair and being, good and honest as far as, how we do things here, like I don't want that, I don't want that issue.
It's hard. You learn the word allegedly very, very fast.
Yes.
Very, very
Yes.
fast.
Yes.
Know?
Yes. And the thing is that that's the hard part, is that some of what has being said is not up to debate at this point. It is the finding of the IG. It is the official it is done. He's out. He's gone. Right. So so that is not in dispute, but the secondary and tertiary effects are, and that is not going to stop there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, man, it happens.
Hey, so I missed a lot of it. Where was that guy tonight? Wait, where was he? You had
Well,
on. That was cool, but it was hard. It was like,
yeah, it was a great interview.
yeah, it was really interesting.
The problem that we were having was he lives kind of in the wilderness, and they were having a storm come in. And so it was very unfortunate because I think he was a pretty knowledgeable guy, and Mike Miller, and we had a lot of fun with it. But I mean, there was only so much we could get out of it.
Yeah, I really I was, I know I caught part of it, but I was especially fascinated by his take on Dogman.
I was a little surprised by that too.
That was
not gonna lie.
That was super duper interesting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the thing, is if you think about it, right? If you think about the kind of genetic variation we see in dogs, right? In dog breeds, right? Then you could imagine some sort of a base breed combination that would result in multiple animals that, were somewhat similar but had, significant face variations, right? Some have a snout, some don't. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I think that's likely based on what I've seen on Earth. I'm just saying from a grand scale of how you evolve planets, like that's completely logical, right?
Well, I mean, it is logical, but when people are seeing, these werewolf-like creatures with dog faces and hawk legs, much like a dog has, with human torsos, it gets a little odd, man.
The problem is I have so much trouble now because every time Dogman comes up, all I can think about is that one story, and I just start laughing. I love that story. The one where the hunter, he has the rifle, and he hears a click, and he looks over, and there's a Dogman like right next to him, and he's like terrified, and he looks at the Dogman looks forward to the deer and like nudges, like go ahead, and the guy pulls the trigger, and as the deer goes down, the Dogman jumps after it, steals his prey, and takes off with it. It's the best story ever.
That's a dink Dogman. That's what that is.
That is the best story
ever.
Dink
of a Dogman.
I love that. Every time that's all I can think about. Every time I hear about Dogman, and I start giggling in my head. It's the funniest thing. I love that story so much. I love that story so much. Smart animal. Smart animal. Why should he take it down if you can do it for him?
Hey, why not? Why not?
That's adaption. That is true adaption.
Very true. Very true. All right, where are we going next there, Fedora?
Oh, honestly, man, I was so excited about this that this is basically all I have to talk about. So if you got other stories we can go into, we can. But I was just so excited about this story. This is all I got right now.
Okay, well, we got to figure out.
We can play with some other stuff. Yeah, no, there's a couple other topics I can jump into, so don't worry about it.
All right, good. I'm just all excited right now because my Hollywood crush, she just announced her divorce, and I am all giddy about this. Oh, I'm so happy, so happy.
Okay, I'm sorry. One, okay, that's odd. And two, you can't say that without telling us who it is. That's just not nice.
Well, the story is coming up in Shirky Poo's news.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I got you.
Mm-hmm.
I got you.
Everybody's going to be running over to Twitter right now. Who's trending? Who's trending? Well, there she is, the lovely Christina Gomez with a super chat.
Oh, Christina, loved your interview of sorry.
We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. We want to say hello to everyone tuning us on in and remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's news wire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the Unbiased UFO Report. The fedora-wearing Jon Hudson is back. And John, outside of the Gary, whatever his last name is,
Reed.
Reed. That's right. I kept wanting to say Hill.
There is one more thing I should add to that before we go on, though, if you don't mind.
What's that?
Well, it's just that I messed up with my notes. So the one thing I did not make clear is that Gary Reed was initially being investigated for these improper relationships. Okay, it was in 2020 that he was found. That was a positive finding on the IG. Then in 2021, he appeared in another IG investigation, and that one was the one triggered by Elizondo, and that one is still ongoing. So this guy is the focal point for much of this. In
other words, he's a scumbag. Let's just call it a spade a spade. He's a scumbag.
Yes. And but a very professionally competent one. So he survived a long time.
Wow.
And we got to realize this guy's got probably, I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think it's 2 decades. This guy is, this is not a role you want an ethically compromised individual in by any means whatsoever.
Gotcha. What else is happening in the UFO world?
The one thing I wanted to say a minute ago was just that it was great the other day. I saw Christina Gomez interview Steve Mera, and I think a lot of people don't get a chance to kind of get into his research, and I could not more heavily recommend that you do. The research he does is absolutely outstanding, and actually, Christina, I got to send you. I have some slides on that cup apport thing that he was talking about, because one of the things he talks about is this great he actually has this magnificent apport case where the teacups that were moving were from a set of 4, and so they were able to take a teacup that had allegedly appeared and disappeared, and then take a teacup from the same set that had not done that, and compare the two of them under certain conditions. And they were actually able to see differences. It actually looked similar to the if when something gets refired in a way. That's almost how it looked at a very at a very low level. And so anyway, Christina, nice interview, and so I just want to mention that, because that, to me, like his research, because like if you start digging into EVPs, I mean, and you haven't looked into his research, you are doing yourself such a phenomenal disservice. Some of his research on EVP is just I mean, this is the gentleman that was doing EVPs on an airplane at 30,000 feet. This is the gentleman who was getting grocery stores to open up for him during the day so that he could do EVPs in there and getting them no problem. This guy takes a scientific approach to it, and needless to say, I adore him. But the thing is, the thing that you touched on a minute ago, which I do think deserves mention, is that there, even with so the reason why everything I was just talking about a minute ago, as far as you report, would not matter, right? Would not matter, and it might even irritate you that everyone's so excited about it, is if you had completely written off the entire, Department of Defense as any sort of source of information whatsoever. And if you only see everything they produce as intentional misinformation, if you only see everything they produce as harmful, if you don't see anything they produce as being actually constructive, then essentially, finding out about some internal squabble between a bunch of people within an organization you don't trust anyway, why does that matter to you, right? But I think this, what really unfortunately speaks to, is what you'd mentioned a second ago, which is this continued approach people are taking, where they're kind of picking topics, and they're using them to draw lines between groups and say, we like you and we don't like you, we don't like you, we don't like you, sort of thing, right? And one of the things that to give you an example, one of the things that came up in Thomas Fessler's report yesterday was was someone reporting that they had gone into the chat room of one of the many YouTube channels that we all listen to, and I'm not going to call them out because I like them, and they'd gone into that chat room, and they had said some positive things about Elizondo, and they got attacked for it, right? And the thing is that, one, whether you like him or not, there's no reason to attack someone who doesn't agree with you for it, right? But second off, if an environment has been safe for talking about someone, and you guys collectively change your mind, you can at least do the service of being politely disagreeing with anyone that still holds your old view, right? And this doesn't honestly, this speaks to what we've been talking about over and over and over again, and that is that whenever there is a vacuum of information, whenever there is a lack of real information coming out, we all invent what's missing, and we usually invent it poorly, and so then we react poorly, and it is what it is. But I think that fundamentally, that's what determines whether you think this entire IG investigation is this wonderful thing that made huge progress and has all these positive ramifications. But if you only see I don't know, Stephen Greer as your path to disclosure, or if you only see interviewing experiencers as your path to disclosure, and you don't see any value whatsoever in that model, then yeah, not only would you not care, but honestly, everyone's excitement about it would probably be a little bit irritating.
Well, that's the unfortunate part, is everything has been diluted so much in topics and people choosing sides that there are very few fair territories where you can say you like someone or not like someone and get absolutely lambasted in the social media aspect regarding it, John. It's turned into a very ugly course of events where it's made a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and and the thing is that when I've seen this kind of behavior come up in smaller organizations, um, the only way I've really ever seen it successfully dealt with is if the people who are the subject of the disagreement are the ones that go in and force resolution. That essentially, that if you end up being a focal point of incredible um, strife within a community, if you become the focal point of some incredible just battle between two large groups, in many cases, and I'm not saying you necessarily have a responsibility to do it. I'm not sure you can claim that at all. But I think in many cases, it's only that person that can step in and say, "You guys are, you guys are being nuts, and this is how we're going to do things."
Well, I mean, the idea behind everything regarding that is, how do you try and formulate people's opinions? Because there are people who feel very strongly that people like Lou Elizondo or even the scientists like Gary Nolan or Eric Davis or even Avi Loeb don't have the UFO community's best interests at heart, and
But
they feel that, oh, let me finish, that they
yeah,
feel that there should be some sort of respect back to a community, especially to those who have been investigating within this community for the last 20, 30, 40 years. All right, there is a lot of tension. You have a new wave of people who believe everything they're hearing right off the bat, okay, because that's what piqued their interest. And there's, hey, the bigger the community, the better for us, right? But it does equal some large UFO cultural uh, opinions and the division between them.
yeah. But the thing is that the way you phrase something before, and you may not have intentionally phrase it this way, but you phrase it in something along the lines of of being able to influence how people make decisions, or how people come to conclusions, or how people evaluate where they are. And the things, I think this is part of the problem, is that all we can focus on is our own behavior, how we react to things, and the quality of the data we offer. How people consume it and how badly or well they process it, honestly, I mean, uh, we don't have any control over that whatsoever. And the idea that they would try, I mean, that's manipulation. At many levels, you just offer good data, and you hope, and you hope, and you hope.
Yeah, but do you understand though where the UFO community is quite fickle regarding their opinions of UFOs and those who come in trying to be the saviors to the field?
Well, yeah, but the thing is that what's happening for a lot of people there is that they have had things happen in their own lives, and they have constructed some sort of a narrative based on what they know and based on what they've been told, that partially or even completely explains what happened to them. And if what you believe challenges that, there's a problem. Right? Because you're not just challenging my idea, you're challenging my comfort level in my life. You're challenging how good I feel about you're challenging my anxiety levels for a lot of folks, right? So it's you know, especially if people have been looking for years for an answer, you know, and here's the rotten part of the whole thing. In the truth of it, doesn't matter if it's true. If you believe you have the answer, run with it. That's all that really matters. It's true. There's numerous studies to show this is the case, right? But everyone's so worried they have the right answer, you know. But the whole idea that you can influence anyone else's, you know, I mean, this is the big problem. All you can ever do is act in the way that you think is proper, and wait for people to come back to you and ask, how do you do that? Why do you do that? That I'd like to try that, and it takes a long ass time. Sorry.
That it does. That it does. But you know what? People are going to try because that's just humanity, John. Final comment. We got about 1 minute here.
Well, that's the other aspect of it. What you just said is it at some very, very fundamental level, we have to just recognize that a lot of this is just humans being human. It's just human tuning. And that's what we do. We human, and we do human things, and we don't like them, but that's who we are. And at some level, we do have to just kind of accept ourselves for what we are.